Let's talk about why your boundaries aren't working. Because I think talking about boundaries has been a huge thing in the past 5 years, where we have seen a recent boom in the self love and self confidence conversation becoming a really big talking point culturally. And boundaries has been a very interesting word that has been probably the most commonly used. You often hear people saying things like, well, it's my boundary, so I'm not going to do that. Or we see a lot of discourse online about how some people may be using the word boundaries in a toxic way. So if you're unsure of what the word boundaries might even mean, in my definition and to my understanding, boundaries essentially are a set of parameters that give yourself and other people guidance on how to best accommodate you. So it can mean that your boundary is that you don't eat foods that contain egg or gluten or milk. And when people meet those boundaries or when people respect those boundaries, it means that they don't give you food that has eggs, milk, or gluten in it. Or it could be that your boundaries are you don't like being touched physically by people who haven't sought permission from you. So when people are going to respect that boundary, they will ask permission before touching you. So I think we're all on the same page now when it comes to boundaries. But when it comes to dating and boundaries, and we dive into the conversation of men and boundaries, this is where we enter murky territory. It seems that even though we can spend all day talking about all the ways that men deliberately misunderstand our boundaries, I strongly believe that a lot of women don't understand their own boundaries either, but it's not for the same reasons that men appear to misunderstand our boundaries. I'm genuinely standing 10 toes on the belief that men do that fiend incompetence thing similar to where they pretend not to know how to load the washing machine so that you'll just end up getting irritated and doing it yourself. I feel that a lot of men tend to act like they don't understand how boundaries work when you explain very clearly and concisely what your boundaries are to them. So they are still invasive of your body. They are still persistent on disrespecting you. And some of them get a kick out of doing it because for them it is a power play. Now, why I think your boundaries might not be working when it comes to the men you're dating is because you keep going back on your word. You keep going back on your word. And, you know, when you go back on your word, it often looks like scenarios where you might do that thing where you've typed up your paragraph in Notes app first. Then you copy and paste it into iMessage or WhatsApp, whatever your preferred messaging service is. You copy and paste it there and you send it to him, and your message is full of all the reasons why you're sick and tired and you're so over it and you're finally done. Oh, I need to sneeze because I am allergic to men's bullshit. There it is. But you know, you sent him this paragraph that you've drafted in Notes app, and it's full of all the reasons why you're sick of him and you're done, and I'm just so over it and I'm leaving and I mean it this time. You see that line, I mean it this time? That's the number one line as to why you're not being taken seriously, because I mean it this time implies that you have said all this before, and in the past when you said it, you didn't mean it because you're still there. If you have to be saying to somebody, I mean it this time, it means neither of you take you seriously. You don't take yourself seriously. He don't take you seriously. You're here having to reinstate your point several times. If you were serious about what decision you're about to make, there wouldn't be an I mean it this time. It would just be I mean it. You won't even need to tell him that you mean it, because your actions will show that you mean it, i.e. you have disappeared and left the crime scene. That is his life and the situation that you called a relationship. Because I think what happens is, as women, when we are sending that paragraph or that message that contains the I mean it this time, I'm so over it, I just feel like this isn't going to work, what you want in response from him is for him to reassure you that he wants to be with you. There's a reason why you're sending that message. What you want for him is to grovel and to tell you that he wants to fight for you and that he's going to do everything in his power to change. Now, the problem with all of that, whilst it is very flattering to have someone groveling, and it is very, very complimentary for the ego to have a man tell you that he wants to fight for this and he wants to fight for you and he knows he's never going to find anybody as different and unique and beautiful as you. It shouldn't take you telling a man that you are about to leave him for him to treat you good enough for you to want to stay. If things have to get to a stage where you have to start instigating what is known as protest behavior, so in therapy or when we're discussing behaviors and we're using like therapy language, protest behavior basically is when if you look at a child, right? Because it's easier to identify behaviors when we observe children. If you look at a child that has been told that they're not allowed to have any more sweeties, but because their brother behaved well and managed to potty train properly, their brother is going to get an extra sweetie. That child is going to do what? The child is going to cry and be like, but I want an extra sweetie. That's not fair. And then throw herself on the floor and just be relentless in the crying and turning it up a notch every 20 minutes, to really just commit to the protest. That's known as protest behavior, right? Now, as people who have grown into adults, how that same behavior of wanting to get your way and trying to do whatever you can to get the person who has authority or power to change their mind. Like how that shows in an adult way is, if you're a woman and you're dating a man and that man seems to wield the power in the relationship, then your protest behavior is probably going to be you getting really passive and fussy and like nagging. I don't even mean to sound like one of those misogynistic men when I use the word nagging, because listen, this is not that at all. Like, sometimes when men want to reduce the size of your concern in a condescending manner, they'll just call it nagging because they don't want to address what you're talking about. That's one thing, but I do think nagging still exists, objectively speaking. Like, I do think some people just don't know how to leave a situation alone and accept that this man is not the person for you. That's when you enter nagging territory. And you know what? When you nag men, it makes them more resistant. I know it's annoying. When you nag men, they get more resistant. When you nag anybody, they get more resistant. When men start to associate something you've asked them to do with a chore, they're not going to want to do it. And something starts to become a chore when you're repeatedly being told that you need to do it, and for whatever reason, you don't want to do it. But now that you're being told to keep doing it, you're going to not want to do it even more. So then the person seeing the thing that you want them to do as a chore then gets projected onto you, and they now not just see the thing that you wanted them to do as a chore, but they now see you and your entire entity as a chore, and then they see the whole relationship as just this, Then the guy is just there because he doesn't really know why he's there. He's just there because he just kind of feels obliged and he doesn't want to be dealing with paragraphs and outbursts and all this excessive displays of an inability to accept that this is just not the man for you. Like, what's going to happen if you just decide to up and leave rather than sending a paragraph of, well, I just think I'm done and I mean it this time? If you mean it this time, you have to show him. Yeah, because I mean it this time is, that's not it. That's not it. Going back on your word is an interesting one because it falls into the territory of being too forgiving. Being too forgiving of men. I've talked about this before on this podcast, and I'll continuously be bringing this up because it is a running theme in this conversation. Sometimes you're just too forgiving of men. You're forgiving them too soon, and you're forgiving them with no consequences for their behavior. Okay? When you forgive a man, there also needs to be a penalty. Okay? You need to start introducing penalties so that he will be incentivized to not play with you again. You might be wondering, well, what do those penalties look like? And why does this sound like I am dealing with HMRC? Well, what I mean by penalties when dealing with forgiving men is, for example, let's say a man who has clearly shown you that he's fond of you through his words, through his gestures, through the time he has spent with you, through all the things he's done to go out of his way to make it clear to you that he likes you in such a way that you have no doubt in your mind that he likes you. Yeah? Because, it'd be like that sometimes. I always say, when things are good, let it be good. Enjoy it while it's good. But when things change, trust your observations and start moving accordingly. So, when things are good, he's doing all the things, you're feeling great, the endorphins are there, the serotonin is there, the dopamine is there, the lovely hormones of the butterfly, fluttery feelings of we like each other is all there, yeah? And then he does something to upset you. And it feels like the rug has been pulled from under your feet and you're distraught because you're like, oh my goodness, just when I started to believe you, just when I started to trust you, this is how you're going to do me? There's going to be a punishment for that because you are not allowed to make me feel like that. I don't care. I don't care if it was an accident. You allowed the accident to happen because you got carried away and you got sloppy and you got complacent. Well, I'm going to have to put you back in check now. So the penalty is going to be... There's this bag I saw on Farfetch. I really like this bag. And I've had it in my wish list for a while. So... maybe after you've gotten me this bag, we can revisit this conversation. Until then, I'm not trying to hear from you again. I need to go and clear my head. That's the penalty. Okay? I know most of you are going to disagree with that. Especially the people who just, I don't know how you guys be finding my page, but you lot be living in my comment section being like, what about love? Why does money have to come into the conversation when we're talking about love? Because when a man loves you, he needs to give you everything he's got, yeah? As a woman, we give all of our emotions, our presence, everything. Everything. Our full presence is given to this man. When a man loves you, he pours into you with his resources. Babe, I'm sorry, that's just how it is, okay? It's like trying to argue about why do men have boners. I don't know, girl. That's what happens when men are aroused, they get boners. You can sit here and discuss all the ways that it is wrong or it doesn't make sense for men to get boners, but they're still going to get boners if they're attracted to you. In the same way, if a man likes you, he's going to spend his money on you. And I feel like when a man upsets you, you need to tax him for the offense caused so that, one, you get something out of that, because that feeling of having the rug pulled from under your feet is fucking inconvenient as hell, because that has put you in a headspace that you had no business being in, and it's not fair. And he has to do more than just tell you, I'm sorry. Because when he just tells you I'm sorry with words and there's no penalty, there's no taxation, there is no gesture of his apology being put into a material, tangible expression that shows you and him that he's serious about his apology, he's not going to take you seriously and he's going to do it again. I know it sounds awful. I know. I too disagree that, people should have to involve material things when they're apologizing. But we're dealing with men here. We're dealing with men and they're not okay people. So you need to also understand how the people who you're dating think. If you're going to be dating men, you need to understand how they think and you need to learn how to work with the way that they think so that you can get the best you can out of it. Or else you're going to be a what? Doormat. And you won't even be a designer doormat. You'll be the IKEA doormat that disintegrates within, 6 months, give or take. Do you want that for your life? No, you don't. So you better find your way into having some self-esteem and learning how to ask for what you want from men who are never going to be afraid to ask you for what they want from you, which we all know what that is. I don't even need to tell you what that is. Especially if you've been listening to this podcast for long enough, you will know exactly what that is. So going back on your word is what's making you not be taken seriously. But there are ways to go around that. Like I said, there's penalty charges. Tax that man. Or if you don't have anything on your wish list, well, you know what? Be even more brazen, because it's always the wild women that men end up really falling in love with because you are unforgettable and you're different. I am crazy enough to be like, let me tell you a scenario, yeah? This literally happened yesterday. At the time I'm recording this, it was yesterday that this happened, yeah? I went to one of my usual dominatrix events, because this event I go to, I don't want to say the name of it because I don't want a situation where people are going to be coming to that event to come and like just be unnecessarily annoying. Yeah. Only the people who message me and show interest in this particular event, I usually tell them what the event is. Anyway, I went to my usual dominatrix event, which happens every other month. So I invited I invited 4 friends who they've never been to an event of this nature. I'm basically the friend who radicalizes all my friends into. I'm the one who's like, girl, I see you with your people pleasing tendencies. Come, let me help you out. Come, let me just show you the complete opposite of what you're doing. Come and be thrown into the deep end here, where you will be in a scenario and a situation where people pleasing has no governance, where you are the ultimate authority. You are the goddess and you have the last say and you get to do whatever you want. So this event is a dominatrix event where all the women / femmes in the room are goddesses and all the men are subs, i.e. they are there to be of service to the women. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I know you must be tired of hearing me talk about this. I try so hard to not talk about this as often because I am not trying to come across as the dominatrix evangelist. Like, have you heard of our Lord and Savior, dominatrix? Like, I'm really not trying to be that person, but this is important context in terms of taxing that man and instigating penalties for men doing things that annoy you or offend you or irritate you. So, at this event yesterday, there was a particular sub, and he was a regular. He was actually one of the regular subs that come, yeah, because I recognized his face, and I've played with him before in the past, just like letting him touch my feet maybe. This time round, one of my friends who I brought along, she was really interested in whipping. So we made him go and stand in the whipping area of the room where there was a metal apparatus that was built for a person to like hold onto some bars and lean over so that they can comfortably rest while they're being whipped. So this guy, he was really happy that both me and my friend were essentially ganging up on him. That was definitely his fantasy. So my friend had one whip and I had another, and I had whip. So it was 2 whips and we would take turns and we'd be whipping him. And to make it even more fun, moments beforehand, I had requested to the DJ to put on some Afro beats. So we were shaking bomb and whipping even in time with the music. It was so hilarious, right? This guy really enjoyed being whipped by us. At the end, he came up to me and he asked me if I wanted a drink. And I said I would just love cranberry juice. So I went with him, dragged him by his leash to the bar. He wasn't on all fours, he was walking, but he had a leash around his neck. So I just to add to the drama of it all, dragged him to the bar and he got me the cranberry juice. But I noticed that he paid in cash. So when the when the cashier returned his change into his hand, I saw a £10 note and a £5 note being put in the sub's hand. And I was quickly like, what's that? And I just quickly just snatched it out of his hand. And then I just like flicked my hair, and then the hair even caught his eye as I walked off. And then I tucked the £15 into my garter, my thigh garter, and just walked off and just left him there. And then and then maybe like 15 minutes later, he saw me sat on a sofa talking to my friends. And he came to me and he kneeled and he was like, I really enjoyed the whipping earlier, but he accidentally tipped half of his water bottle onto my foot. And he quickly, like, profusely apologized. He was like, I'm sorry, goddess. And I was like, you owe me cash for that. So then he got up and he went to the corner of the room. And then I saw him fiddling with his wallet. I imagine the reason why he went to the corner of the room to get cash out is because he didn't want me to see that there was more cash in his wallet, because I would have taken more of it. But he went to the corner of the room and he came back and he gave me £20 and I snatched it out of his hand and looked away and just tucked it into my purse. And that, to me, is a classic example of hashtag tax that man. Give him a penalty for offending you just because you can. Obviously, every man won't do it, but it's about gauging the kind of person you're with. I was in a room where it's all about women being adored and worshipped. You poured water on my. Are you all right? You poured water on my leg. There's no way I'm gonna accept sorry with mouth. Give me your cash now. So I ended up going home with like £35, and that ended up covering my Uber that I had spent to go to the event and go back home. And yes, I could have decided to not even ask him for money and just accept the apology. And my night wouldn't have been ruined by not asking him for the money. But it's part of it. It's part of the experience of being a woman and knowing that you have power. You demand it like he's gonna do it. Yeah. Now, another thing when it comes back to why your boundaries aren't working and why you're not being taken seriously with your boundaries is because you might not like the sound of this one, but you keep going back to him. Why do you keep going back to him? I don't care if you've been with someone for 5 years. If that man isn't treating you well and he keeps on doing things that he has to be accountable for, he keeps on doing things that he has to apologize for, he's just a sorry ass man. Just because someone is accountable, that isn't inherently a wonderful trait to have, especially if someone keeps on creating reasons to keep on having to be accountable. In the same way, just because someone is noble enough to apologize and hold their hand up when they're in the wrong, that doesn't inherently mean anything if they keep on creating reasons to have to be sorry. Leave that man alone. Your boundaries aren't working because you keep on going back. Do you not have anyone else to talk to? Are you not a sexy fine ass woman with a big brain and an even bigger heart? Like that, if that useless man who you keep going back to and who keeps on making the same sloppy, goofy mistake can be attracted to you, then other men can be attracted to you too. You don't believe in your source enough, and that's costing you. That's costing you your time that you're never going to get back. You're not going to get your time back. You're not going to get your time back. This is your only life. Why are you going back? Why are you going back? That man keeps on breaching your boundaries. Why are you going back? That man keeps on creating reasons to have to keep on apologizing to you. Why are you going back? Even if that man is creating reasons to keep on apologizing to you, and those apologies come with, gifts and other forms of tangible reparations, why is he doing things that he has to be sorry for? That is the main issue. Because if that guy was well suited for you, he wouldn't even put himself in a position to lose you. So sometimes it's not necessarily just about having boundaries and having to keep telling someone what your boundaries are. If you have to keep reminding someone what your boundaries are, maybe them boundaries ain't working, babe. Maybe you need more firm boundaries. And sometimes that firmer boundary is just disappearing into thin air in that man's life. You don't need to be there. You don't need to be there. You're not his carer. You're not on the payroll. Why are you there? Why do you feel obliged to be there? Because in putting the relationship above your own self, you're disrespecting your own boundaries. And that, in effect, plays into why that man doesn't take you seriously when you convey your boundaries. And this is not to say that, if you disrespect yourself, you deserve disrespect from other people. No, that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you have boundaries, you kind of need to show people how those boundaries work. And you need to let people know that if you fuck about, you will find out. So when it comes to boundaries, men know which women are flimsy with their boundaries. Men will make observations about you. And based on those observations, I've always said this, men will make observations about you. And based on those observations, they will decide how they're going to treat you and how seriously they're going to take you. If that man knows how to coerce you out of your boundaries, it's because he knows that you're easily intimidated by him, and it's because he knows that you have a soft spot for him. And because of that soft spot that you have for him, you are more likely to give him free passes, and you are more likely to keep going back on your word. That's not love. I think it's okay to have a soft spot for men. There's a few men in my life I have a soft spot for, yeah. Some of them are aware, some of them are not aware. The ones who are aware of the soft spot that I have for them, they are very respectful of that soft spot. they know that the fact that I have that soft spot for them means that I'm going to be more upset if they upset me than I would be upset if a man who I barely have any kind of attachment to upsets me. It's about respecting what it takes to even get this close to me. Also, men know when you don't believe in yourself, and they know when you don't believe yourself. When you don't believe in yourself, you're usually someone who seeks validation from other people. You need more reassurance than usual, and you kind of rely on that man to remind you of who you are. When you don't believe yourself, that's usually shown in the way that you express your boundaries. So sometimes your boundary will be, right, I just want to go, I don't want to have sex anymore. I just want to focus on myself. I'm not doing this anymore for a while. And then you go back and have sex with him. Or another boundary is like, I don't want to go to his house anymore because when I go to his house, I end up having sex with him. So I'm going to not go to his house. And then he calls you, asks you what you're doing, and it's like 3 a.m. and it's lonely o'clock for you. And then you end up going to his house, and then what happens? You end up having sex with him. He's aware that you were trying to focus on not having sex for a while. But he enjoys the ego boost that comes from knowing that he can subdue you a bit. I don't think that it's always necessarily like evil or malevolent when men enjoy the ego boost of knowing that they can breach your boundaries, but it does do something for their ego. And I think they derive a lot of power from that. And that power is expressed in different ways in their relationship with you. When a man knows that you're going to keep going back on your word for him, he's going to know that you are not serious. So you can't scare him. Yeah, you telling him that you're going to leave is not going to scare him because he knows you'll be back. That's why these guys don't take you seriously. I'm saying you are scared to reinforce your authority. You gave your power away way too soon. You don't just lose your power out of nowhere. Whoops, there it's gone. No, you lose your power when you give it. Like, you give men power by going back on your word. Did you know that? You give men power by going back on your word. If you have decided to verbalize to him that you are not going to sleep with him, you're going to need to stick to that. You're going to need to be strong because it's about creating a precedent. If you are too lenient with him, if you are somebody who doesn't seem to have self-control when you're around him, girl, you in danger. Danger, mouse. You in danger, girl. And it's not me that needs to tell you, because self-control is the one thing that you would actually need if you want to have authority or influence over other people. Did you know that? That's why I'm actually not keen on encouraging women who are curious about femdom or dominatrixing to go into it, because a lot of women don't even have a firm system in place when it comes to their boundaries. A lot of women are easily carried away by being called beautiful, or by being called goddess, or by having a man do the thing where he's like being of service to you. And it's like, well, this is all a performative role play that the man gets something out of and you get something out of, but he's still a man. After you've done your little role play with him for 10 minutes, if you're at an event doing this role play, he's going to do it with someone else because that's the purpose of the event. Like, you can't fall in love with a man because he's treating you the way that you've never been treated in your whole life. Like, there has to be more that weighs your anchor of reality down. If you don't know how to stick to your word, you will not thrive in femdom. You will get got as a dominatrix. There are subs who specifically seek out dominatrixes who do not have a solid boundary framework in place. They enjoy loitering in the loopholes. There are subs who really get something out of watching you argue with them or watching you make exceptions for them because they're good looking. Sometimes I see it happen at events, actually, the dominatrix events, where because a sub is good looking, you're letting him do stuff with you, or you're letting him. It's just like, girl, a sub is a sub is a sub. A man is a man is a man. I've always said this. If you listen to this podcast often, then you would have heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again if you're new here. I am not swayed or swooned by a man's looks. I might consider it if I already am drawn to him, but it is not the ultimate deciding factor on what's going to make me choose to partner with him, or what's going to make me choose to see him in a different light other than what he's already shown me to be who he is. Sometimes when you come across men in these dominatrix events, they are tall and handsome and good looking, and you're like, oh my goodness, it must be my lucky day. Not only is this man fine as hell, but he's also a sub. I want to lock him down. I want to give him special treatment. I want him to just. It's like, well, you know, a lot of these guys who are stereotypically good looking and who also happen to enjoy being subs, they are aware that the looks work in their favor, so they're used to getting special treatment from doms. That's why you need to be the fucking glitch, babe. You need to go get you some core values. Yeah? If you want to go into any kind of interactions with men that involve you being the boss, the queen, you need to have your own core values, and you need to have your own self-control. You cannot control anybody without controlling yourself. And you cannot control anybody anyway. You can have authority over people, but you can't make anybody do anything that they don't want to do. And that should never be your intention. You should never want to make anybody do anything they don't want to do. People should already want to be under your authority if they are drawn to you and if they're attracted to you, especially within the conversation of femdom and dominatrixing. Men should already want to be told what to do by you, but you also have to respect their boundaries. Like, if a man isn't into cash play, then don't do cash play with him. If a man wants to, I don't know, suck your toes, and for whatever reason you've decided that, well, how much money have you got in your pocket, and he has none, then he's not sucking your toes. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. He'll find someone else's toes to suck. It's okay. In the same way, if you want to be with a man who does XYZ for you and he can't do that, that's okay. He's not a bad person for not being able to facilitate your desires. He's just not a capable or compatible person. There's a difference. Like, my work is never about judging men for not being the kind of man I want them to be. My work is about stay over there with your empty toolbox and go be with someone else who doesn't have the needs or the requirements I have, because there are more. This is the thing. Like, men will always statistically benefit anyway, because women who think like me are in the minority. Women who think like me are far and few between. There are more women in the world who think the opposite to me. There are more women in the world who have a lot of sympathy and sorrow for men who are willingly putting themselves in decisions that they refuse to be accountable for. That's why I don't feel any type of way about thinking the way I think. I have my core values. So that's why it's easier for my boundaries to be set. Because I have my core values. I have my non-negotiables. I know what I want for my life. I know what I want out of partnerships with men. If I'm not seeing that in a guy, it's because it's not there. That's okay. I will see it in someone else. If I don't see it in someone else, that's okay. All the things that I could want from a man, right? I feel like I experience pockets of those things through the various people in my life, minus the sexual intimacy. But I'm not somebody who craves sexual intimacy with men. Like, I sit on the asexual spectrum, but I'm also bisexual, but I sit on the asexual spectrum, meaning that I have attraction to people and men, but I don't feel a desire to act sexually on that attraction. Like, I'm good over here. Having said that, if I do come across a man who he ticks all my boxes, babe. He's tall, he's dark, as in black. He's tall, he's dark, he's handsome, right? Like, he's a gentleman. He just wants to take care of me. Just wants to support me. He's my biggest cheerleader. He's got his own thing going on. He just wants to settle down and be all about me. If I find that, then I'm open to bust it open, girl. I'm open to that, but I'm not looking for that. Like, my life isn't lacking, like the things you want outside of sex from a relationship with a man are an emotional connection. You want someone who's going to make you feel seen and safe and heard and appreciated and valued and irreplaceable. And I promise you, you can find that in your community. You can. Women who date men need to learn how to foster community outside of men. You can't only be experiencing the feelings I've just described when you're dating men. Men are not the only source of that feeling, and you don't have to be romantically involved in people to feel that feeling. You can live a very fulfilling life without being in a relationship with a man. And when you learn how to be fulfilled without a man, it means that when a man does come into the picture, if he chooses to go ahead, that's fine. Like, the picture remains pretty without him. It's okay. It's literally okay. So you need to learn to stop being so agreeable and malleable, because again, certain men seek out women who are agreeable and malleable because those women are people pleasers, and people pleasers are people who struggle the most with boundaries. And that's why I strongly advise my people pleasing friends to tag along with me when I'm going to these dominatrix events, because it will force you to confront your people pleasing tendencies nose on. It will force you to confront it, because you can't be a people pleaser in an environment where you're supposed to be pleased. Oop. But also, being a people pleaser can mean that when you're setting boundaries, it feels like you're literally killing someone. As someone that was born and raised a people pleaser, I know this feeling all too well. It took work for me to get to the way that I think. I wasn't born thinking like this. I spent years consistently working on myself to get to a place where I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about not being the agreeable woman in a man's eyes. I don't feel bad about not being malleable. I don't feel bad about not being a people pleaser. As a man, you should feel bad for not pleasing me. As a man. Huh? If you're not pleasing me, what were you put on this earth to do? I'm really confused, because you're not building houses anymore. You're making podcasts to discuss women's body counts. You're not giving women money anymore. Instead, you're just flashing money on your body to get women to be attracted to you. And then when they're attracted to the same money that you went out of your way to flash to them, then you call them a gold digger. So as a man, what are you here for? Nothing you can do for me. You're just useless. You have no use. You have no use. So because you have no use to me, I don't feel any reason to make any special accommodations for you. And one last thing before we wrap this episode up, please, for the love of God, if you have a boyfriend who is threatened by the idea of you embodying sentiments and ideas and thoughts that make you more powerful, please stop listening to my podcast in front of him. That is the goofiest thing you could do. Don't listen to my podcast in front of your boyfriend, okay? Do you think men be letting women listen to their locker room talk? This is basically locker room talk, but for the girl them. Yeah, stop letting him hear. Don't even let me know. Like, if he mentions that you Slumflower girl, pretend you didn't hear it. Don't let him know, because you see what men will do, yeah? Once they've clocked on that you are becoming a bit more intelligent and that you've gotten some intel, they're going to start trying to prepare for a version of you that's going to try and outsmart them. So they're going to start doing it's like telling a drug cartel, hey, we are about to investigate you. On Monday at 8:52 p.m, we are going to bust through your doors and we are going to search your house unexpectedly. Do you think that cartel is not going to get ready and hide everything and flee in multiple directions? Why would you let a man in on your plan, girl? Like, don't let him know that you listen to my podcast, okay? Especially if you're trying to get better at having boundaries. If you're trying to leave him, if you're trying to leave that man and you're listening to my podcast, don't listen to it in front of him. Don't let him know what you're planning, because people like that, you need to sneak out. You mentally sneak out first and then your body leaves later. That's how you do it. Especially if you're in an abusive situation. Don't let him know that you're listening to my stuff, because he's going to talk you out of it, or he's going to get threatened and he's going to start becoming even more mean to you. And because you're already in a people-pleasing headspace and you're not yet in a place where you feel strong enough or safe enough to enact your boundaries, you're in more danger. So part of having boundaries is also having boundaries that you set for your own self to follow, where you have to start having some self-discipline. Not every thought needs to be said, because it's not what you say, it's where you say it, how you say it, who you say it to, when you say it. So if you know that you're dating a man who is threatened by the idea of you being powerful, then you need to quietly nurture that power so that one day when you feel strong enough and you up and leave, it will be a swift exit. No looking back. No, I mean it this time. You'll be out of that door and on your way to your freedom. And I hope to see you there, girl.